last week.
And so thank you to Simonia. We are just recording it now. So I will, I'll send the recording out to everybody afterwards. But
Harris, I can't be recorded. I'm in witness protection.
Oh yeah, and Lynn, no cursing, or at least I guess not that you don't want the world to know. So that's I'm okay with it as long as you don't want the world knowing it. So
I'm a Wall Street guy. I can't help it. I'll behave.
Perfect. So let me go through here, and so you all should still be able to see my screen, see my drive.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's the opening page of the drive, and then we will get into what is page 1 for you all in the bottom right, but is the drive model. And so the drive is all about obviously what drives us, what are our motivations, what are our values, what are our behaviors and habits that we show into the world. The drive, as you all mentioned, as you all saw from the webinar that Heil did, is all about those 3 things: our motives, our values, and our habits that we show into the world is what we call in this report our drivers. And the real meat and the good stuff, if you will, of this report is in the 28 different drivers. If you're familiar with EQI, it's in the 15 different elements or components. So think of that, those 15 elements or components in the 28 different drivers. And those drivers are split up into 6 different factors. Starting here, we have connection, which is all about building relationships and working with others. Harmony, which is the drive to support and treat others well. Productivity, which is reliably executing tasks. Meaning, which is our purpose, trying to find one's purpose and to make a lasting or noteworthy contribution. Impact, which is the drive to be bold and influential. And then finally, insight, which is the drive for creativity, knowledge, and learning. And so underneath each of these 6 different factors, there's anywhere from 4 to 7 different drivers, and gives you a sense of what that can look like. Page 2 shows the drive profile. This is interesting data. There are a good amount of individuals that take an assessment and like to get I'm an X, you're a Y, I'm a zebra, you're a tiger. This is sort of what that is getting at when it comes to the report. It's helpful for people to be put into a box. Some people like to be put into a box when they're going through a different report. And so what this does is it calculates, because you're high on these drivers and these drivers are lower for you, it puts you into a certain box. You'll see I'm a humanitarian, genuine, easygoing, and service-oriented, motivated by relationships and serving the broader good. And so usually when individuals read that 2 sentences about themselves, yeah, that does usually agree in the box that I am. And it measures you from individual focus. So are you more task focused, focusing on what you do as an individual, or leadership focused? Are you more focused on what the group wants to accomplish? And then task versus getting the job done, or people and caring about the people that are surrounded. And then that is the XY axis that it kind of puts you on, and then it puts you into a category here. Just as a fun fact, if you will, when they were doing this data and information, when they were doing the data information gathering for the norm group of over 4,000 individuals, when it came to managers or leaders inside an organization, 80% were in this top rung. Just interesting data. 20% obviously were in the lower parts. You don't have to be up here to be a leader, but just interesting data when it came to the report and
Harris,
what
did you
came
say
out.
I'm sorry, did you say they were in the top row?
The top row, so entrepreneur, builder, developer, and advocate.
Thank you.
And as a coaching opportunity there, if I'm in a leadership role and I'm a humanitarian, I might be a little bit too much individual focused, and there might be areas for opportunity for me to be more leadership focused. And so we can turn that into a coaching conversation, training conversation. If you're in a leadership role, and even more so if you're in a technician or a steward role, you can have some pretty good, robust conversations around that.
I have a quick question. As a humanitarian, if you wanted to develop further for a leadership role, would we be looking at moving you into an advocate?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense of it's hard to think about because I'm a humanitarian, these are the things I need to do to develop into an advocate. When we talk about the work, it's really going to be done at the driver level. And so, yes, I might end up moving into the advocate role, but it's more going to be at the driver level. I need to work on my persistence or status or whatever it is that we decide. That's where really the work is going to be done. This is just interesting, and for those people that like to be in that box when they take the assessment.
Okay, so it's not hierarchical.
Correct. Yep.
Got it. Okay, just
Yeah, let me ask this question too. It's kind of related because so as a humanitarian, you are that thing. And so knowing what the strengths and the elements that are or the 28 drivers, I guess, that are involved in that, you may choose to look at some of the ones that are strengths in the advocate role and try to build upon those, but you would still be a humanitarian. You would
Right.
just be acknowledging that as a humanitarian, I may need to develop a factor in this area and be more like an advocate to help me do better as a leader.
Exactly. You're exactly right, Simonia. That's a great point. And like, are there things that I need to do that are more in this entrepreneur or builder aspect, depending on the role that I'm in? But that really gets in at the driver level when we start to think about the work that we can do on ourselves as a leader.
And Harris, that point, I'm sorry, that point about the 80% of managers in the top row, is that a global number, and how big was that sample size again, please?
There's over 4,000 individuals. It was global, but it was heavily populated in the US. I think it was about 90% was in the US. It's mostly a US population. There is some global aspects, and it was a norm group of over 4,000. That's what this was built off of.
Were they in professional roles or just general population?
They were professional, 18 to 73 professional population. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for the questions. Please keep them going. Anytime you have them, feel free to ask those questions as I'm going. Perfect. So I will keep moving through. And the next page is a really interesting page. It is the DRiV summary. And what this does is it gives you your scores on all the different factors. And so you'll see I'm a 13 on insight, I'm a 91 on impact, 97 on meaning, all the way across the board here. What that means is that meaning I am more driven by meaning than 97% of the population, by the drivers inside the meaning grouping. Similarly, for insight, I'm more driven by the drivers, I know it's a little bit confusing, than 13% of the population. So the drivers inside insight are pretty low for me. I'm not very driven by the things that the drivers that we put inside the insight factor, but then on the connection, impact, and meaning, those are really big for me. And then on harmony, which we'll get into a little bit lower. And so I'll drill into the driver level, and that's again where the important, in my opinion, and in our opinion, really good stuff is, but just from a factor level, this gives you the numbers there.
So let me ask you this, because it sounds weird, but and it's okay. It just sounds weird that a humanitarian would be low on a harmony scale. You know what I mean? Like harmony would not be your jam as a humanitarian.
And so it's a really good question. Can I put a pin in it?
Yeah, I want to see how it unfolds. I'm just waiting. I'm just your show. I just want to see how it unfolds.
I'm with you. I looked at that and said, what?
So
is there a theoretical maximum to this whole thing, Harris?
What's that?
Is there a theoretical maximum? In other words, could you score above 90 in all 6, or would that be really weird?
That would be very weird. So I haven't seen that in the probably close to 500 of these that I've done and looked at. I haven't seen really high on all of them, but because you're kind of one or the other when you're answering the different questions in a way.
Thanks.
Yep. And the bottom here goes to what drives you. So here are the top 5 things that drive me: authority, status, legacy, rapport, and commercial focus. And then here are the 5 things that drain me. Bottom 5 things that drain me. Wisdom, which is just tough to say out loud, but I'll get into that because it is true. Deliberation, compliance, growth, which is also tough to say out loud, but I'll get into that one as well. And then creativity. Also 3 of them that are tough to say, but really when I drill into them, they are pretty accurate. So I'll get into what that means. And Simonia, this is where I want to get into your point. But what this page does get at, which is interesting, when we're doing organizational work, so from a training perspective, having a top 5, bottom 5 can be a really interesting training tool. And so you go into an organization, you see, hey, Harrison and Simonia, here are their top 5 and bottom 5. And so you get to see, if I'm talking with Simonia, these might be the things that I want to talk to her about. And then if I'm talking with Lynn, these are the things that I want to talk with him about. And so this is certain ways that I need to flavor that conversation based on what drains him or her that I'm connecting with.
Mhm.
So I paused
So
there.
that assumes in a team environment, you would have shared the results with each other.
If people are comfortable with doing that, yeah.
That's pretty cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
Sadly, what drains me is personal wealth. I'm kind of surprised by that, but
So most of, and Lynn, you get at a good point. Most of these will stay the same throughout our entire lives. Most of them. Some of the ones that will not is personal wealth. That tends to decrease the more we keep going in our career, the farther we are in our career. Personal wealth tends to decrease. Legacy tends to increase the further we are in our career as well. But for the most part, these are hardwired drivers, things that don't necessarily change. We can develop them, we can work on them. The whole goal is to give us greater self-awareness so we can better self-manage ourselves. And so knowing that I'm really high on status and authority and legacy helps me then self-manage myself. But at the end of the day, those are really things that drive me. And I can't, and I don't necessarily want to make them a drainer, but personal wealth is one that we found maybe was high when I was at X point in my career, and now it's just gotten lower because of X, Y, and Z. So that's one of them that does tend to decrease with age.
that makes sense because you either got where you wanted to, or you gave up, and you're happy where you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions before I go into the specific factors? And Simonia, I'm going to hit on your question right now, but any other questions before I get into that?
What do the dots mean? So the dots obviously represent the 2 lowest ones.
Sorry, which dots?
The harmony in the middle and insight. Those have dots.
So the bigger the, and this is embarrassing, this is on recording now, but the bigger the shape is, the more it is. So see how this the part.
Right. Oh, got it. Oh, so that's relation to the size of the percentages of that particular thing. How much mass of that is there? Okay.
Yeah, I see that now.
Yeah.
Got
I'm
it.
glad you asked. I had no idea.
Trying to figure it out.
And so yeah, that's what these mean, is because it's so small, this part's small, because it's so big, this is so big. But great question, Simonia. So let me drill in. I'm going to go to harmony specifically because that was the one Simonia asked about, but then I'm going to go to some other ones because I talked about how it can be slightly embarrassing to be low or high on certain ones, but I'll get into what that really means. And so when it comes to harmony, these are the drivers that are put into the harmony factor. And so again, the work is really going to be done at the driver level. So me understanding that I want to be in a position where what's important, having power and position is important to me, clear reporting, versus not needing to use or respond to formal titles or roles. And so because this is high, that brings the harmony score down. Because competition, I'm a very competitive person, that brings the harmony factor score down. And so there's 4 drivers inside harmony that are inversely correlated with our factor score. So the higher these 4 are, the lower our harmony is going to be. And so if I'm all about financial stability and security, and I really care about that stuff, that could definitely rub people the wrong way from a harmony perspective. And so that's why that brings my harmony score down. And I mean, a big problem, if you will, of any assessment is going to be the verbiage that's used. And so harmony obviously has its share of difficulties that comes with, but that's where that comes with. If I care a lot about status, having tangible markers of success, lower harmony. So all those things can be related to that.
Harris, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
And that is, when we look at the different graphs, how can we tell, is there an easy way to tell which ones are negatively correlated? Which are the ones that pull you down on that?
Asterisk.
Yes, all the ones with the asterisk. there. So authority, competition, personal wealth, and status, and see service, forgiveness, and honesty. Don't have
Okay,
those.
I'm not seeing the asterisks here. Oh,
Let
wait,
me-
now I do, now I do, now I do. Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Great question. While we are on harmony, I'll get this very often when people are looking at the scores and they'll see, oh no, I'm a 10 at honesty, but that's not me. I'm really honest, and that's BS, and no, that. And so what honesty means in this case is that when you get important data and information, are you willing to not share that with anybody? Are you low honesty means, no, I don't need to share all data and information that I get with other people. And high honesty means openness, and you're going to share everything. And that's the type of kind of person that you are. And so honesty was the word choice there, but low honesty doesn't mean you're a dishonest person. It just
low honest means you can keep a secret. My sister is high honesty. She can't hold water. She's going to tell it.
There you go, Simonia. Exactly. And so that is what high and low can mean there. And so high doesn't mean good and low doesn't mean bad. It could, in a way, be 56 drivers. Obviously, 28's a lot. So, but low honesty means something, and high honesty means a different thing. Not high honesty good, low honesty bad. Does that make sense?
The descriptions you give sound more like introvert extrovert characteristics, no?
It does.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we're thinking and talking a lot about how this can be used with MBTI and what are the correlations with MBTI. Obviously, that's a big part of the OKA culture and the work that. And so there are certain ones where if you're an S, this is how. And so that is if you're an F. Very often the connection will be higher if you're a feeler versus if you're a thinker. That may, and not necessarily, we don't have data on that yet, but it's something that we're thinking a lot about, and Heil is spending a lot of time on.
Who owns this thing? Do you and Heil drive the research on this, or do you have input to it, or what?
So it was created by a company called Leadership Worth Following out of Texas. It was an individual that worked on this as a PhD project. So it's been in the works for about 8 years. He brought it to the world 2 years ago, and then he came to OKA and Heil because through a mutual connection where he had heard Heil had a really good reputation. OKA had a good reputation of making tools actionable. And so now Heil, we just started with our certification of this actually today and tomorrow. Heil's doing the first certifications of this that we've done. We get pitched new tools relatively often, and it has to play nicely with the different tools that we have. And we thought this did really play nicely and hadn't done something that we had really seen out there in the market. Yeah, there are a couple other competitors, but not one that we liked as much as this one, to be honest.
Are you the first ones offering certification, or somebody else do it too?
We are the only certifier on this tool for right now.
Thanks. Cool.
You know, Harris, what's really kind of interesting, there's some correlation to, Korn Ferry has a traits and drivers assessment. I can't remember the title of it right now. And we use it with some clients. But what I'm really liking about this is that, and I didn't experience it the other day, I experienced it when I got my report and read through it, is that it's such an easy read in terms of understanding your data on so many levels, whether it's the size of your hexagon on the inside or your length of this or the, you know, whatever questions to consider. This is really a nice user-friendly piece. I like it.
Yeah, thank you, Chuck. Yeah, Chuck, I appreciate that. And yeah, any data that you have about other assessments and what you've seen is helpful as well. I like that what we like a lot is that it gives you a lot of data and it's not so incredibly overwhelming like some of the other assessments that are out. Like Hogan has something that's similar, and it's part of a giant big package that can sometimes be overwhelming. I like that this isn't as overwhelming in our opinion. You can give this to somebody and they can relatively straightforward understand. I mean, yeah, you could see, whoa, I'm low wisdom and I'm really low wisdom. And if I don't have somebody across the table who's certified, I could take that the wrong way. But if I actually drill down, yeah, I do actually focus more on relying on experts and best practices versus thinking big picture, sharing own opinions. Like that is me. I mean, 100% that
Mhm.
when need to, I know I need to rely on the experts and best practice, and I'm okay doing that. For those familiar with the EQI, I'm low assertiveness, like sharing own opinions,
Mhm.
assertiveness, I'm very low assertive. Like these are things that I agree and make sense to me. But at first glance, low wisdom can be a tough thing. A 0 on wisdom, it's like,
Mhm.
oh God. But like, it doesn't mean I have no wisdom.
Yeah.
It means I'm more likely, very much more likely to rely on experts and best practices. A little bit of
wisdom
a,
to seek counsel from people like Heil.
Mhm.
exactly. A little bit of a S&N here as well, sensing and intuition. Sorry to keep making MBTI and EQI references, but I imagine there's some common language here, but thinking big picture versus what's out there for me. I mean, I'm very low on a lot of these insights, and so low creativity. I do like practical, simplified solutions, leveraging what is versus solving complex problems. Like I get overwhelmed by complex things, and I want to go to practical, simple. Like that is true. Yes, I'm low creativity on this, but that's accurate. I mean, it's real data about me, whether I'm proud of it or not. It's who I am, and it's me, and it's what drives me versus what drains me. Y'all have been doing an awesome job of asking questions as we're going through this. Any questions as you're seeing, and I'll kind of go off me sharing my screen for a little bit. Any questions, thoughts? There's some other things that I want to show you. Specifically, I want to talk about the different brackets of the drivers and how we think about them. But before I get into that, any questions or thoughts that you all have?
Yeah, first of all, are we on time from your perspective, Harris? We okay with this?
Yeah, and I think we'll actually end a couple minutes early, so we're definitely on time.
I work.
So,
All right, thank you. I work with a lot of quants. I come from Wall Street, been there all my life, around the world, and they're going to wonder what explains the lack of apparent balance of the number of drivers within each factor. 4 of them have 7, 1 has 5, and 1 has 7. As you said, 4 to 7 per factor. I know people are going to. I mean, I know it's not a certification class today, but it just strikes me as curious. What causes that, and are they therefore not equally weighted in terms of the importance of the drivers?
So it's a great question. There was actually, I think it was 58 different drivers that he started this research with. And this is all in the tech manual, which is many pages. And because I'm low on compliance, I don't spend too much time on there. But that does exist for your quant people, and we can go into that. But the short answer is there was 58, I think 58 or 56, and he drilled it down into 28. The connection factor, I think, was actually like 14. And so he made it into a tool that you can bite off as opposed to overwhelming. And so that was part of what the research and data did. But Lynn, I'm more than happy to also share that data and tech manual with you to the extent it's helpful for you to drill into that.
All right, thanks. I'm an extrovert, so I'm not likely to read about it, but I will listen to what you tell me about it.
Any other questions or thoughts before I get into kind of how we think about sectioning off those different the different drivers? All right, let's drill into that. So I'm going to take you all. I'd love for everybody to go. Oh, I just have to say it while we're here too, because this is one. I've done a lot of these. And so low excellence, you tell somebody they're low excellence, they're going to want to grab you through the computer screen and strangle you. Nobody wants to be told they're low excellence. I'm really low excellence. I don't want to be in the weeds, staying out of the weeds, adjusting. Yes, I am low. High excellence, what it can be sometimes is perfectionist. Everything has to be done absolutely perfectly. And so it's good to maintain those high standards. But that's what really high excellence means. And low excellence doesn't mean you don't believe in excellence. It means that you're willing to adjust your standards, stay out of the weeds, and move on. So that is one.
Oh, for you, best is the enemy of good enough. Let's press.
What's that?
Or when you're looking at it, you're like, the best product is the enemy of good enough. And right. You're like, we're in the good enough category. Let's go on to the next thing.
Exactly. That's where I sit. And there's a lot of people who are really high excellence. They're like, no, things have to be done really, really well. And that's what drives me. And we're going to do this absolutely perfectly. And that's the way that things are done here. And so you get those types of individuals, and they're just driven by different things. And necessarily, I'm good to adjust standards. I'm willing to stay out of the weeds, but you get that.
Would it be an issue of what I'm trying to get at is some people have high standards on everything, and then other people say, what's the impact? Does it matter? And if it matters, then you got the high. And if it doesn't matter, then you can move it over. So my guess is the people on the far right, it's got to be high no matter what. People at the low don't care either way. And then the middle folks, it's based on whatever criteria is important to you.
Right. Yeah, exactly right. And wanted kind of to take it back to the earlier questions around the profiles. When we think about someone in a leadership role, so on that top rung, the entrepreneur, the other ones that are up there, I know we were just talking about, when we think about entrepreneur, builder, developer, advocate, low excellence is actually part of that. And so if you're on that top rung, if you're in a leadership, low excellence is actually that you don't have time, you don't have capacity, most likely or possibly, to be high excellence. I mean, that's a real, that's where the correlate. Yeah. So if we get a leader, which is incredibly common, who's really high excellence, that could be a development opportunity for that individual. Is there an ability? Yes, it's really good that you ensure quality. Yeah, that's built, that's driven in you, but is there actually a little bit of opportunity to take it down a little bit, move a little bit more towards the middle? Or if I have a manager who's really high in excellence and I'm lower, and that's a drainer for me, it's a driver for him or her, we could butt heads at that, especially when we're not intentional, we don't have the language around it. And I just, why does high always need everything to be so god darn perfect? And I'm like, let's just move. Like, that is a real manager employee issue that could come up, that this tool helps give us data and information around.
Now, it would seem to me that would also depend on what the position is, what the profession is. You know, if you're in medicine, high is probably really good. Keep you out of courtrooms. But yeah, you know, just depends on what the consequences might be.
Yeah, although that's probably true, although I'm not sure, because I'm thinking, so this is another person who's low excellence too, in places where the stakes are really high. As a leader, it was always important for me to find the person on the team who really cared about that and made sure they watched that thing because they cared about it. And so it's important. So I got to have somebody on it who will drive that to the end and treat it like a perfectionistic, you know, out with the outcome I need. The other thing though is when you think about if I were low excellence, which I am, and when I've had managers who were high excellence, it felt like micromanagement, which I hated. You know what I mean? It works better in the reverse. When I'm the leader, people love it that I'm low excellence because they can go off and do their thing without me digging down into whatever it is they're doing. I just need to know that it's getting done.
Yeah, I really on this one, and I have to say the perfectionist thing rings true. And what Simonia's point there, I'm thinking it might be role specific, right? Because if airline pilot or a surgeon, I think I'd like somebody high on excellence, as a matter of fact. And I suspect Hyles, as an NT, is probably high on this. There's one other thing I want to ask you about, though, since this conversation started up. In our business, on connection, inclusion is huge, and I'm big on it. What's a manager going to say or do, in your experience, Harris, if they score low on inclusion? They know the firms have got to be about this. I mean, it's the right thing to do, all that. So what do we say on that one?
So you're saying, for example, their inclusion's low, but they're part of an organization or system where inclusion is high, which obviously a lot are. Is that your question?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'm high on inclusion because it's what I do. It's how I do things too, by nature. And I'm surprised it wasn't a little higher than 76, but helping others feel respected, I think, is very important. But what does a manager do or say when they score low on this? They focus on developing.
Yeah. So so it becomes kind of two different ways when we think about this from a development perspective. One, so there's a workbook that Hyle's created around this that says, hey, if inclusion is low, here are a couple things that you can do that help you work on inclusion. We're not necessarily then going to rescore to make sure that your inclusion bumped us or whatever, that the score, but it does give you examples, some things that you can do. So that's part one. Part two is for every driver, if it'll say, if you're low on inclusion, here are 3 other ones that you can lean more heavily into that will help bring up inclusion along the way. And so if you're higher on rapport or collaboration, can you lean more heavily into these that along the way, inclusion will be brought up? And so those are the 2 developmental aspects that we can do when we think about, I'm in a system where something is high and I'm very low on it and I need to develop it. Does that make sense, Len?
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's similar to the if you have somebody who's over the top on an element of EQI, there are offsetting factors. There are others that we can bring up to help balance that score that might be too high, for example. Is there a 360 available on this now, or is there?
There is. Yeah, there is a 360. I can show it to you kind of once we go through here. I'll show you what that looks like as well.
Thanks. I'll shut up.
No, I think this is
No
really
need, no need.
interesting too, because like when he mentioned the thing about inclusion, I was like, let me go look at my score and see where I am in this, because I think I would be high in inclusion, but I'm not. I'm relatively low, but also high in collaboration. So that makes sense to me. I do tend to lean on collaboration to help me be more inclusive for more
Great.
ideas
That makes sense.
that
Yeah.
I would naturally do.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And then because collaboration is so high, that might not be a piece of feedback that you need, is that you need to be more inclusive, but because collaboration is so high, that's not maybe a piece of feedback. And so that's a great example of, because that one's high, this doesn't play as big of a role as maybe a different one would.
Yeah, like if I were coaching somebody who was low on inclusion and collaboration, it's like, now we got to do some work here because you're not listening to other people and you're not interested in hearing from other people either.
I would
Right,
say,
and then
who cares?
And then it becomes a, well, what are they driven by? What do they care about? And then how can we bring inclusion and collaboration along with commercial focus or whatever it is that they're really high, that they care about, so we can communicate more effectively with that.
Harris, one question, and I'm trying to
Please.
get a perspective as I'm listening to everyone talk. These are all, in some respects, based upon all these drivers, were a result of polarities. So when you're answering these questions, and I can't remember how they were all answered, but I remember when Hyle talked about it, that, polarities are about, it's like, you don't want to be in high in all these, right? You're making choices in how you are, what's important to you, based upon your situation and what's underneath the iceberg. And when you look at these things, we wouldn't look at this and say, like, if I'm looking at myself and saying, oh my gosh, you're really low in that, that's a problem. It's really about, what does your situation call for? Therefore, is that working for you? And if that is, then that's, and I guess I'm trying to understand, because MBTI is very polar. Those are 4 polarities, right? And I'm assuming it seems like these are 2. Are they all like polarities? If you go from one driver to another that's a different color, there's probably a polarity in there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, you're right in the sense of how you're describing it. Like, you're either maintaining high standards or you're adjusting standards. Like, you're either one or the other, not good or bad. And so that's important distinction when debriefing, when talking about this. When the EQI, we're high on empathy, and that's a really good thing. I mean, until that becomes too much, but like, you want, and this isn't the same, and that low could be just as good and or just as bad as being high. There's not a good or bad that I think is important to be aware of. We're actually, so as Hyle created a activity where an organization decides, here are the top 5 biggest drivers organizational wide for us. Here are the bottom 5 drainers for us. And so if the things that are high for the organization and I'm low in them, I got to figure out a way to make this work. I mean,
Yeah.
and or leave the organization. But like, I need to figure out a way. If I'm in an organization where status, if I'm low on status, but I'm in an organization where I go to a workshop for an organization where status is really high, I gotta I gotta go to work that day and make status big for me so that I can effectively work inside this type of group.
Mhm.
And so
if the culture
knowing that, hey,
plays
when
for it,
yeah, and so when I know that if I go in and do work within the military and authority and status are high, but I mean, Haug is an example, he's really low on those two. No wonder he's so drained. I mean, so drained after being and doing a DoD workshop or whatever the kind of specific.
Yeah.
And I just use that as just a random example, but when we go into a culture, like it can give us good data and information
Got it.
about that.
Got it. Interesting.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Harris, when you say they're really important, and I think the point about corporate culture made a lot of sense that we just heard. Is it really important defined by a group profile and saying these are the actuals that are important, or is it they've gone through these and said these should be the most important in our organization?
Should be.
It's based on should be.
Should be.
Okay. And is there a team profile available
So
too?
there is a team. I'll show you that as well, which is interesting. But I think it's a should be. I think it's a here's our goals. These are really important to us versus here's where everybody scored high, because we might actually not like where everybody scored high and everybody scored. And so I think it's a should be. It's more of a conversation than it is a data poll.
Thanks. Like EQI can be.
Yeah.
Cool.
The other one that we'll see very often, low on enjoyment. So I'm low on enjoyment. And this is like, I'm fun. Like, I like to have a good time. That's BS. Like, and that's true. I do like to have a good time. And a lot of this has to do with humor in the workforce. So when it comes to laughing, making jokes at work, like I'll do it and too much of it. And I'm going to say, let's freaking get down to business and do what we need to do. And so that's what low enjoyment means. Doesn't mean I don't like to have a good time, but when it comes to focusing on work, I'm going to be more driven by when we're at work, we're going to do work versus high enjoyment might be, no, it's really important for me to protect work-life balance, have fun. Like that's what low enjoyment means. It doesn't mean you hate fun. Because I've gotten some responses of that as people have gone through.
Does that mean these correlate either to the task people dimension, the x-axis, or the individual leader, y-axis of the model?
For enjoyment specifically?
Or any of them, yeah. I mean, the example you just gave
So
sounded
they're
like
all
the task people thing, as opposed to individual or leader.
Right. Yeah, and so I mean, you could make that argument in the sense of like that's why I'm, either high on task or high on people based on enjoyment. Yeah, that's because these are all a combination of the drivers, high and low. Here's what the profile is that you are put in.
I think it's also important to focus on the fact that this is work oriented. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So that
Mhm.
if you did this in terms of your personal life, some of these things are likely to have changed. For example, yeah.
Exactly. Great point, Wanda. Yes, work related. My wife actually took it, was like, hey, this actually isn't, and it was because she was more of a personal perspective. And so this is definitely supposed to be taken from a work related perspective, what helps drive and what helps drain you from a work perspective.
Right. Okay.
Was that in the instructions, by the way?
I think it is.
I don't remember.
And like to the extent that they, do both interrelate, I think it's very often that they interrelate, but there are certain situations where they don't. So everyone go to page 10, because this is really interesting data and information that I always like to say, and this is how we think about the different drivers. And so this has all 28 of your drivers laid out on one page, really interesting, good data here. And so from 80 up through 100, and so for me, that's going to be from recognition up through authority. I am actively driven towards that driver behavior. I'm continuously, perpetually motivated to do that thing and away from the pole. Authority, status, legacy, rapport, those are big drivers inside of me. I really care about those things. Between 60 and 79, So for me, I just have one there, and that's charisma. I'm clearly and consistently driven towards that driver behavior. I can, and at times will flex away from it and towards the opposite pole, but my default is to want to do it. That's important to me. Between 40 and 59. So for me, that is going to be honesty, persistence, and forgiveness. I'm totally ambivalent. I do it as much as I don't. It totally depends on the circumstance. I might do it on Tuesday, but not on Wednesday. I'm completely ambivalent about it. So it's between 40 and 59. Then we start to get into some of the drainers. So between 20 and 39. So from caution up through autonomy, I'm clearly and consistently driven away from that driver behavior. I can, and at times will do it, but my default is to move away towards the opposite pole. And then finally, our big drainers. So between 0 and 19, from wisdom, still sounds tough when I say it, and I do this for a living and talk about it all the time, up through excellence, those things, I'm actively driven away from that driver behavior. I'm perpetuously and continuously motivated to not do that thing and towards the opposite side. And so when Hyle keeps talking about compliance and deliberation and wisdom, I can't, it's enough. I just can't do it anymore. We got to more focus on things. And so just joking around, but that when someone just keeps talking about something that drains you, it makes you, oh my God, I can't keep listening to Harris talk about commercial focus anymore. I'm just going to throw them out the window. If it's something that's a big drainer for you and a high driver for that individual. And so that's the different ways that we think about sectioning them off. So between 0 and 19, 20 to 39, 40 to 59, 60 to 79, and then 80 through 100 is the way that we think about spreading them out.
Could you repeat what the 60 to 79 category is?
Yeah, you're clearly and consistently driven towards that driver and behavior. You can at times you can flex away from it, but your default's going to be to do it. It's going to be a relatively big driver for you.
Okay. Okay.
The last,
thank you. So this is a matter of amount then. It's a matter of degree with it increasing.
Yeah. The other way that we think about this for all the intuitives and metaphor individuals is imagine all 28 of these drivers are elders or advisors, people that you listen to when making decisions. The higher something is for you, the more likely you are to call on them. And so when authority and status and legacy are talking to me, yeah, I want to listen to what you're saying. And I want to take that into account when I'm making decisions and as I'm thinking about my life. And then wisdom and deliberate and comply. Please, I don't want to listen to y'all. And if you can just go back into the corner and I never have to listen to you, that would be awesome. And so when we think about making this real and thinking about the ways that it can be part of our life, that's how we think about these 28 different drivers and try to make them as, quote, real and actionable as possible. I won't talk you through the last couple pages. These are development perspectives. It gives you, here are some good questions. What driver should you lean into to be more effective? What driver should you monitor and manage to be more effective? That's kind of getting at that overdone strengths part versus what are things we need to develop if you're familiar with the EQI. And it gets into, here are things that drive, it goes in, here are your top 5 drivers. Here are some things that you can do that will help you with it, that'll help you lean into it more heavily and so it goes through, and then it does the same for the drainers. Here are some things that you can do from wisdom. And so I'll let you all take the time to go through that on your own. Let me pull us back here. I know I said I'd share the 360, which I will do, and then the team report, which I'll do, but any questions or thoughts, Martin or Katie, anything that you all have as well, or anything else that I can do to be helpful?
No, this was super helpful. I appreciated all the commentary and the questions and discussion. And I mean, the report is already so comprehensive on each thing. So this was super valuable. And I loved the webinar the other day too.
Oh, well, thank you, Katie. I
think all of your stuff, by the way, I think you guys need to do like couples workshops and like family workshops. I know you guys are focused on work, but this would just be such a fun like couple building activity.
So it's funny you mentioned that. So I already mentioned my wife took it and I've taken it. We had a good conversation, robust conversation about it. We had recently just a couple sign up for the certification together. And so we are
Yeah.
inadvertently getting couples that are asking for this. But I appreciate that, Katie. That means a lot.
It's either going to be a great tool, or if one side has it, it's going to be great in the divorce proceedings. Wow, we're gonna.
Because I mean, you imagine like someone that's really high on compliance, and then somebody's that's really low on compliance. It's like, oh my, and the tension and conflict that can happen there is
To see it laid out in like non-judgmental terms like this, to be like, oh wow, there's this value difference, instead of focusing on like whatever the little individual issue is, like the quality of the dishes washing, you know.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a
Well,
good.
you know, that's the concern about a couple of those words about like honesty. For one to say, well, yeah, I'm just really high on honesty and you're really low on honesty. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the excellence and honesty, and a couple of them, you know, you really have to have handy the way it's defined in this, because intuitively
Right.
it just doesn't fall. I mean, you can feel almost some internal resistance, like you said earlier. And boy, you really have to have those down.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
why
you're
it's
right.
why I like love going into it so quickly, because if we hadn't, and I'm not low excellence, that's BS. I do everything well. I mean, we've heard it a lot, and then I get into it, and every time without fault. Yeah, I don't need to stay in the weeds, and I'm not a perfectionist, and so I get that all the time. But I love Katie's point of, yeah, the dishes got to be perfect. Well, actually, I think they're good enough. Perfectionism, they don't, and so it's a great point.
We'll just use paper plates instead. I think Chuck's point, by the way, is really important. That people have to be careful about putting a generic definition on the terms and understand them more from the perspective the way you described them, Harris. I think that'll help, first of all, if they put that out of their mind. Second thing is, as I'm looking at certification dates, I want to do this. Just have to figure out which one's going to work the best. You got me in, and I'll take that $50 you promised me for saying that. I appreciate that too. Oh, there was another point.
Planted a seed in here.
Wait, I'm into fairness. I didn't get that deal, Lynn. I'm gonna.
All right, anyone,
with
it goes to anyone.
By the way, if you have a couples thing going on, I would think if they learn that it's complementary, that one's high and one's low, that's actually pretty cool. You make a better team, just like any other difference, right?
Yeah.
Especially like even for wealth building or personal wealth, understanding who in the team really feels some sort of way about that could lend itself to say, oh, well, you should be the decider on this, or because you're the driver of this, you have more interest in this. It could actually help them make better decisions together, or reverse some roles and be like, oh, you know, like me and my husband, I'm no longer in charge of the dishwasher because I loaded wrong. I don't really care as long as they're in there, you push the button and they're clean. But he's like, no, they should be laid like this. So then now you're in charge of that because you care about that.
That's a very clever strategy, by the way. Never master a skill you do not want to be in charge of. I always say.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Someone, I think it was Simonia, you mentioned the putting the right person in the role based on this. And so this can be used as a selection tool. It was built partially for that. We're going to use it more from a development perspective because that's just the type of work that we've done. But what we like about it from a selection perspective is there's not good or bad. There's not your high empathy and I'm low empathy. Like that is bad. I mean, being low empathy is just not a good thing. But like low on something that could be really good for a certain role. And so this can be used from a consulting perspective as well. If you're looking for a position and these are the things that are important for you, then you can use this as a test assessment for that.
I will say though, as an HR person, I have strong opinions. As a minority female as well, I have strong feelings about using tools like this, particularly when the base of participants may not be as diverse, right?
Yeah.
About using tools for that type of thing, because it could weed people out. So I spent 25 years in the military, and on some of the diagnostic tests, you know, most military leaders are IS. I am not that, but had they used that to decide who would be better in positions of authority, I couldn't have made it, you know what I mean, with the way that I made up. And so I'm nervous about that. I choose not to use these tools in the way. I do pitch it more of I have used them personally in terms of self-management and understanding my environment, and it actually helping me to excel in environments when I was not like the others, to hone in on what are my superpowers, how can I use how I'm made and built to thrive and survive in this environment, and what do I need to do and shift differently. So I just throwing that out there as commentary. I love the developmental approach. I don't know that I don't believe people have malicious intent, but I think when they rely on it for certain purposes and say, oh, I could use this and I could pick the right person, it's kind of like picking the right gender or the kid with brown hair or whatever. And it's like, no, you could really, do something different. It could be a nice surprise.
I great point. Totally agree with you. Yes, 100%. Selection, assessments can be used as one tiny piece of data if you so choose so, and we will be using it for development perspective, but I just do mention that LWF, the one that created this, does use that for that perspective. And Simonia,
can I mention something? I spent 14 years defending employment tests in arbitrations and lawsuits. I got rid of every personality test.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't defend it in court. And personality is not as easy to measure as cognitive ability. The other thing is, if you're going to use it and it does have adverse impact, then you have to be prepared to show a positive relationship between test scores on this and job performance. And if you can't show that, you're going to lose.
Yeah, it's a great point.
I can see this in placement of people, and to gauge if people are unhappy in their role. Could you use it as a coaching tool to help them find something, a role that they might be happier in?
Sure.
That would seem to make sense. I'd be very careful about the selection point, though, as both Wanda and Simone had said.
Yeah, believe me, you don't want to be sitting in that chair with opposing counsel, down your throat.
Even if you think about, I remember we did this as a leadership team in one of my jobs, not this particular assessment, I think we used the DISC profile or something like that. And when we got around, we had this one guy, he was a Marine, and he was a high D. And so once we figured that out, all the times we got stuck in a quagmire and we would talk around issues and we'd flipped it around a couple of times and we'd looked it over, we'd slap the table, we'd turn to him and be like, make the call. Because he's going to make the decision. That's where his gifts and his genius was. But he would sit there the whole time and never say anything. Before, he was almost the quietest person in the group. But until we decided to share and understand what our gifts were, he was the only D and he was a high D. And so once we knew we needed to make a decision and we talked it all over, we could turn to the person on the team that would be comfortable in that role and be like, you make the call, and he would do it, and then we could move to the next issue. So in that ways, we used it not as a punitive thing, but as a way to kind of help us get through things better and faster.
Which
I love.
That's pretty cool.
Development is great.
Yeah.
Can you go past 3 o'clock, Harris, with these other reports?
I can. I definitely can. So I will, for sure. I just want to be respectful of everybody else's time. Just as far as certification, Lynn, thank you for mentioning it. In case y'all are interested, there's one every month for the next several months. Right now, we're still virtual because of COVID and everything going on, but it's 2 straight days, 8 to 5, and then probably 8 to 3 or 8 to 4 online on Zoom, trying to keep the groups relatively small so one can learn from one another. And it's usually $2,000. It's $1,800 right now, kind of for the first ones that we're having. And as part of those first ones, so for April, May, and June, we're also giving 3 free drives as part of that. And so you get the opportunity.
Okay.
Do you then put us on some type of website, or how do people then find us to say, oh, I want to use this, these are some certified folks, or do you not do that at all? I don't know.
Yeah, we don't do that as of not right now. We don't do that with the EQI or anything. You're more than welcome to use that as part of your marketing. It costs $75 for this report, the one that I showed you on that you all got. And once you're certified, you take a test, and then you're certified and you get access to a portal where you can administer the different assessments. And so the 360 is $200. And I'll talk about the team one as well. It's still being finalized, but it should be around that 200 amount as well.
Thanks.
A quick question about the team one. So the team one would not be a compilation of all the individual reports of the individuals of the team, there's a different line of questions and whatnot related to building a team?
No,
profile?
it's a
Compilation.
No, it's a compilation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I'll show you the 360 and the team. But before I do that, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Any other questions for anybody that needs to hop at 3 o'clock?
Thank you so much, Harris.
Yeah, thanks, Katie.
All
Thank
right,
you.
take care.
Thanks,
Bye,
Chuck.
Yeah,
Katie.
you need to run, but I loved it. It was great. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all. Appreciate your
Bye, Chuck.
time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Cool. So I will show you what the 360 looks like. Let me share my screen here. So
How many pages is it?
12 pages.
12. Okay.
Yeah, and it's huge right now. So the this is a 360. It's a sample report, and so you'll see about your drive. So we had one self, one leader, 4 peers, or 3 direct reports, 5 other. It'll tell you the names of the people that are part of that group. Gives you the model, the things that are part of the model. And then this is where it can get pretty interesting and can give you some good data and information. It gives you do more of these behaviors. And so the questions that were surrounding enjoyment or alignment, it'll tell you this is how people answered based on Harris. Do a bit more, 70%, do 20%, give you some good data information about how other people are seeing these. These are the ones that you're doing just right.
Hey, pay attention to that fun one, dude.
Do less of these behaviors in the sense of when does too much become a bad thing, if you will, or when does too much, and so that's what that can
Let
give
me
us.
ask a quick question, Harris, about this. So this is their thoughts about what you can do a bit more of. How does this align to those top drivers that you have? Like if they say do more of these behavior and these are your bottom drainers, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
is that a thing?
So it's definitely a thing. It's a great question, and that's all data that you then need to be able to put into account when you decide whether to make decisions or not. And so it'll base that off how you respond and how other people respond about you.
So is this is really just their inputs, not including your
Their
assessment?
yeah. So their data.
Oh, wait, you did have on the lineup in the early pages, you did have self in there. So does the self rate whether we need to do more, less, or the same?
So it's based off of how you yourself rate your drivers, and then it will take into account what the others say about you as well. And so because autonomy was really high, people are saying that might actually be too much, and do a little bit less would be what they would.
It's overdone.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So
In the other report, it talks about developmental opportunities as your top 5, your bottom 5. But if I looked at my bottom 5 and I came in here and everybody said, don't worry about it, I'd go to something else probably, right?
Right.
Assuming they're important to the role.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And so I'll send this to you. There's some more information that goes into the behaviors related to each of the different drivers. And so what I'll do is I'll send this in follow-up to you all. I just did want to show that real quickly.
Sure.
Let me show the team report also. The team report right now is done at the factor level. And so, which is helpful. And I think there's going to be one done at the driver level as well. But what it says is, so from an impact perspective, our team very much focused on assertive, risk-taking, influential, abstract. And so but on here, we're kind of all over the place, if you will, on the connection factor, harmony, here's where and so it gives you data and information. At your team's best, you will. At your team's worst, you will. It's done at the factor level right now. They're creating it done at the driver level. That will be ready in summer of 2021. That was a high push that said, this is good. It'll be better if it's done at the driver level. And so when you're certified, you'll obviously get access to the other one once it comes out. But this is what exists right now from a team perspective.
Is there a maximum number for the team compilation?
I don't believe so.
Thanks.
Okay.
And then
You
it
do a whole
compares
organization profile then.
and compares you versus the team as well. So I'll send both of these just in case you're interested in seeing them.
Sure.
Any other, I know we're over, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Any other questions or thoughts, or is there anything else that I can do to be helpful for you all today?
You know, half my audience are probably a temperament NT. So competency is very important to them. They tend to look for research, you know, from Stanford, Chicago, Wharton, Harvard, et cetera. That this doesn't seem to have that yet. So what do we do about that in terms of credibility and competency to sell to people for whom that's very important?
Yeah.
What would your advice be? I mean, Hyle Rutledge to me is a name that I use with people,
Mhm.
whether they know it or not, and OKA as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so it's a great question. It's a great point. We are trying and working with the individual that created the DRiV is writing articles to HBR and so we are trying in the process of that. We're in the early stages of it, and so
Where did he get
yes,
his PhD from?
uh,
Where did he do his PhD work?
industrial and organizational psychology. Where was it from?
Mhm.
I can't remember off the top of my head. His name's Chris Coltis is the individual that created this. And now Leadership Worth Following is the organization. They're out in Texas.
Mhm.
And so they're the ones who created this. So Lynn, your point is a good one. We're working on it is the short answer. I think part of their reason for coming to OK was for Hyle's name. I mean, just to be honest, I can say it wasn't for my name. It was for Hyle's name. What OK has done in the certification world for over 40 years. So we do get pitched these tools relatively often. And this was one that we really liked and believed in. And the validity measures all match up to all the tools that are out there. They're better than Hogan. There's data and information on that. So that does answer part of your question. And the other thing is just the self-validity of this. So I've done hundreds of these. I haven't come across anybody who said, no, that's not me. I mean, like the validity, yes, it has to pass the mark on the validity, what Hogan and what all the ones out there that people believe in the metrics of, but there's also the self-validity factor that is hard to manage. And we've gotten that consistently, which makes us feel good about the tool as well.
Well, this thing's on the money for me, man. I got to tell you, I was really shocked when I read through it this morning. That how accurate it was. I mean, I came out an entrepreneur, the upper left-hand corner. I was surprised that I thought I had more of a people focus, but the read here is I'm more of a task-focused person. I care a lot about people, but I guess at the end of the day, it's about growing the business and engaging people. But
I could tell by listening to you. I'm an entrepreneur too. I was like, he's my tribe. I heard you. I was like, he's looking for credibility. I was like, I know he's my people.
We got to talk.
Yeah, we got to connect for sure.
And thank you for your service, by the way. That comes from the bottom of my heart. My late father was a Naval Academy guy.
Oh, very cool.
So apologies if you weren't Navy or Marine Corps.
No, I'm Navy. I love it. See, I told you you were my tribe.
Very sweet.
Well, this guy has the right background to develop an assessment.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want an assessment, you want an IO psychologist doing it.
Right. Sure. Exactly. And Chris could nerd out on the psychometrics of it. And I'm low on compliance. I'm low on deliberation. It's but I am. If you're interested in that, or Lynn, you want to drill deeper in, or anyone does, he's more than happy to have those different conversations.
Yeah. How does he spell his last name?
It is
Coultas. I've already looked him up. Nice little website. Yeah. Coultas.
Yeah, I just threw it in the chat as well. He was the one who developed this.
Okay. We probably belong to the same organizations.
Well, thank you all so much for your time and attention for taking this. I'm super grateful for it. I'll send everybody an email so you do have your contact information, but I love also as someone high on connection that Simonia and Lynn are connecting just makes my heart warm. So I'm grateful for that.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Yeah. This was good.
Yeah.
I wish we could have heard Martin's voice. I love the conversation and the questions. He was in the chat though. We saw you. You were feeding it in.
He might be an introvert if I had to guess. I'm just guessing now.
Yeah, he was fine. He was like, whatever, you can't hear me, whatever. I'm fine with that.
We have our attorney Wanda to make the call on this too. So this is great.
No, I'm an IO psychologist. I was just in the hot seat.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
I was the star witness.
Yeah.
Harris, can you connect us somehow? Because I don't know if I'm looking at the June date just because the other dates don't work that well for me. I would love
Yeah,
to
I'm
take the
thinking
class with
June
these
too.
guys if we could.
I
but
know,
Yeah.
right? So I'm glad you said June. I was
Good.
wondering when you were gonna do it. I'm gonna do it in June too, I think.
Yeah,
we-
June looks good for me.
That'd be awesome. I would.
Come on, Martin, come on in. Your voice is on. Come on
Come
in,
on.
Martin. The
Come
water's
on, Martin.
warm.
Come on, Martin.
Let's get you for
Martin.
June.
He wants to deliberate about it.
That's
Um,
okay. He'll
Actually,
do
he's
it
like,
right
I
for
want to
him.
find me another group of people who are not talking like this and are not going to be calling me out. He's like, definitely not doing the June class.
He's like anyone but June.
Yeah.
I think we should negotiate a group discount, guys. What do you think, Harris?
So funny. Well, yeah, what's the group rate? What's the group rate? We're
It's
in.
nice chatting with y'all. Nice chatting with you. No, I'm just messing.
Good exit, Harris.
Thank you
Yeah.
all so much. But seriously, if you have any other questions or there's anything else I can do, I'm grateful for your time. Don't ever hesitate to reach out.
Thank
Will
you.
do, for
Thank you.
sure.
I want to pick up that change style indicator pretty quick. I have a class on leading change, and I think I'm going to build it into that. That looks pretty straightforward. How responsive are you if I do that $800 and the online thing? And then I need a one-on-one talk with somebody, I think, to be qualified for
Yeah.
the CSI.
Yeah, it's a quick certification. I mean, a week max. So we
Okay,
can do it
that will
pretty-
work.
Very good.
Thank y'all. Talk to you
Thanks,
soon.
Harris.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.